O'Hare. Your next news update is at 7, and Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Zelensky's about-face continues. The talks in Saudi Arabia yesterday, where Secretary of State Marco Rubio, NSA Mike Walls were present representing the Trump administration, yielded the following. Marco Rubio announced.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball's now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
Well, Ukraine was over a barrel since aid and intelligence sharing had stopped. And this is something that Zelensky should have foreseen before he decided to conduct himself the way that he did in the Oval Office the other week. So anyway, this is some hopeful progress. And even if Russia were to agree to this 30-day ceasefire and stop attacking, which they are currently, are we really on the path to a lasting peace? Is there going to be such a thing that we can ever count on when dealing with Putin? Let's put that to Fred Fleitz. He's the vice chair of the America First Policy Institute Center for American Security. Previously served as National Security Council Chief of Staff, as well as a CIA analyst and a House Intel Committee staff member. Fred, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Good morning.
Morning. So what of this apparent progress towards peace?
I think it's a significant step forward. Remember, just over a week ago, Zelensky was absolutely against a ceasefire until other issues were resolved first. He wanted some kind of security assurance. He wanted to talk about territory, NATO membership. But Trump's priority is to stop the killing and to address these issues in negotiations. And this could take time. Some of them may never be resolved. I think Trump took the right approach. The challenge now is to get this to Putin, to get him to agree to this. Trump said yesterday outside the White House that he will be calling Putin to try to get him to sign on. And I think it will take more than sanctions. I think we have to make a case to Putin that this is an historic opportunity with the only leader on the political scene, maybe ever, who will give him the best deal possible to end this agreement. That's Donald Trump. Let's just hope that Putin does the right thing and accepts it.
Well, in terms of what would persuade Putin to accept this, I mean, to genuinely accept it, not to accept it with the idea of using this to retrench and prepare for more warmongering in 30 days or before then, for that matter. Is there anything specific in terms of a carrot or stick that Trump should add to his public threat of sanctions?
Well, I mean, Russia will eventually win this war, but it's going to be at a very high cost. But in terms of carrots, we could say to Putin that Ukraine will be neutral. We can't get Ukraine into NATO, even if we wanted to, because it would take a unanimous vote. But I think welcoming Russia back into the community of nations, lowering sanctions, maybe someday allowing it to enter the G8, putting forward a better path for Russia and the Russian people, I think is the best incentive that Trump can offer. Now, that's going to take time, and I think that if sanctions ever were lowered on Russia, I think a percentage of Russian revenues has to be used to rebuild Ukraine. But the case we have to make to Putin is that there is another way, and there is a leader of the world scene that will make him the best deal possible.
Just to role play on this for a second. What if Putin said, Okay, President Trump. Well, let's. I need you to lower the hostility towards Russia's sale of oil and gas to Western Europe. And in fact, I want to be able to sort of compete on the open market, or maybe even he may even demand something better than that, to make sure that we can sell our goods to Western Europe, like we have been. What I mean, is that a point on which Trump should provide some latitude? Because, of course, Putin needs to prop up his economy just like any dictator.
I think there'll be a proposal to at least partially lower sanctions on Russia, but there may be some strings attached as an incentive to get Russia to go along. As I said, a percentage of those revenues could be used to rebuild Ukraine.
What's the timeline of all of this? I mean, is this? I know it's out there. So, is this? How soon do you think Putin will respond?
I think we'll get an answer one way or another within the last week. We then have to talk about how to implement the ceasefire. There's talk about a peacekeeping force of European and non-European states to monitor compliance. I'm sure that was hotly discussed in Ukraine because there's different interpretations of what that force should be. Some people want it to be an offensive military force that would enforce a ceasefire. That is something Putin wouldn't accept. I think it's going to have to be traditional peacekeepers who are lightly armed and are there with the consent of both parties.
I've seen a couple of foreign policy deep thinkers suggest that a test case for the ceasefire will be to see if Russia agrees. I mean, a test case that this is a real thing will be to see if the fighting stops in the Kursk region. Do you agree with that as sort of a bellwether to assess how serious Russia is if they first provided verbal support for a ceasefire?
I think that's fair, and Kursk may be a stumbling point because Kursk is an area of Russia that was taken by Ukraine that Russia is in the process of taking back. So will that area be frozen? Will Ukraine have to give that back to Russia to get a ceasefire deal? I don't know, but that's going to be a thorny issue to resolve.
I wanted to get your view on a couple of other matters, including the rolling suspension of security clearances. Tulsi Gabbard suspending the security clearances for people like Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. And this is on the back of security clearance suspensions for Brennan and Milley and others. All the sort of the high-profile deep state enemies of Trump and this administration. How should the public view sort of the security clearances deal back and forth? Biden, of course, killed security briefings for former President Trump during his time, and now there's reciprocal security clearance repeals happening. What are we to make of the importance of that?
Most Americans don't realize that these extremely high security clearances held by senior government officials, they usually keep them after they leave government service, supposedly so they can help the government if the government ever needs to consult with them. But what really happens is they use these clearances to get extremely highly paid contracts with defense and intelligence contractors. This is a privilege, and if the government doesn't want to use these people, and I can tell you that the Trump administration is never going to ask Anthony Blinken anything because of his role in the Hunter laptop letter.
Nor should they.
They shouldn't hold the clearances.
Yeah.
And when they have them, it allows them to talk to people with other clearances. They're getting access to information they don't need. This is a system that's been abused for a long time. So I support pulling these clearances from people who are not in the government and are not doing government work.
I want to also get your view on Romania and the Ceausescu election ban there. Some people have raised this, J.D. Vance in particular, as an example of this is Eastern Europe, of course, but Western Europe and Eastern Europe. This was supported by the Western Europe. That how they do not represent not just American values, but the values of free minds and free markets. And he went through a couple of illustrations famously in that speech he gave, and they continue to pile up.
Well, what's happening is, as a popular candidate to lead the country is being barred from election because he's too conservative and too controversial in the country. It is a very bad precedent for democracy. Western Europe is involved in it. The Romanian government, the Romanian courts are involved. I think that this is just going to continue in Romania, but I hope it doesn't become a trend.
One more region to tackle. I'm really ready to bang the drums of war after I saw these pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian Hamas sympathizers deface Trump's Turnberry golf course in Scotland with the "Gaza is not for sale" imprint on a fairway. Now they've got my attention.
Now they're going to flip cars over.
Right? Yeah, I'm ready to go to the front. But Saudi Arabia, on a serious note, Saudi Arabia sort of making a public statement about, we meaning, the Arab world, should give Trump some cover here for the leadership he's providing in the Middle East. We should allow him, give his proposal serious consideration and be constructive and engaging with him and so forth. I just thought that was really interesting. Is that Saudi Arabia basically saying, sure, you do it, because we don't want to?
Well, the Saudis appreciate an American president who's supportive of them. The relationship with Biden was so rocky. Remember, I think Biden called the Saudi royal family a pariah just before he was elected in 2020. Concerning Trump's plan to rebuild Gaza, I see it as an initiative to smoke out other plans. And there's a very good plan that Egypt has put forward that most Arab states are behind. It sounds like the Saudis aren't writing off Trump's plan, but the nice thing about this, and the Wall Street Journal wrote about this, the editorial board, they hate Trump and they hate this plan.
Right.
They admitted that Trump forced the Arab world to face its hypocrisies about Gaza. They talk about how they care about the people of Gaza, but they don't want to do anything about it.
And to the extent that they do take the lead, they want America's backing. I mean, financially and in other material ways, I suspect, and this is why the bon mots are flowing.
I think that's right, but I mean, when America comes up with a plan where it's going to take control of territory and move people out of an area, that gets everyone's attention.
Yeah.
And there's pretty solid opposition to what Trump has proposed, but he is forcing them to come up with alternatives, and I think that's a good thing.
Fred Fleitz, Vice Chair of the America First Policy Institute Center for American Security, previously served as National Security Council Chief of Staff and a CIA analyst, as well as a House Intel Committee staff member. Fred, thank you for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank that cares about your business and is invested in your success. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Chris Johnson.